Alrighty, guys. Welcome back to another live stream. Today we are going over how we ended up raising the stupidest generation. This video is by Philonautica, so go subscribe to their channel if you want to check out that full video with no reaction, obviously. And let me make sure. One sec. I don't. It does this every time, where it just freezes. So I think I have to remove it and then add it back. Let me put myself in the corner here. Dude, sometimes setting all this up just annoys me so much because it just doesn't make any sense why they make all this so difficult, I feel like. As far as just recording everything, things freezing. It's just kind of stupid. Alright, so how we ended up raising the stupidest generation. Make sure you can see all that. Alrighty. Make sure the audio is recording too.
And emotions grow stronger than evidence. Yep. But the real question is...
Alright, so I'm going to run this back and we can go ahead and get started on this.
I read a line somewhere which says, "You can silence 50 scholars with one fact, but you cannot silence an idiot with 50 facts." This one line perfectly...
I know he's probably about to go on to explain that, but I literally have to say that off the rip, that is some of the realest stuff I've ever heard in my life. Because you can go around, I've talked to a lot of people and I have discussions and debatable topics, and some people are just impossible to convince even if you tell them the fact. I remember I had this buddy and we were talking about something in the gym, and it was a literal fact online, and even then he just would not believe me. So I'm not saying he's an idiot or anything.
I read a line somewhere which says, "You can silence 50 scholars with one fact, but you cannot silence an idiot with 50.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's an idiot or anything, but what I am saying is that don't waste your time trying to convince people things that you already know the answer to.
50 facts. This one line perfectly captures the tragedy of our age. Because when critical thinking dies, collective stupidity naturally rises. In such a world, everyone is convinced they are right, and everyone else is wrong. Opinions grow louder than logic, and emotions grow stronger than evidence. But the real question is, why does this happen? Why is critical thinking dying faster in our time than ever before? That is exactly what I will explore in this video. But before we can understand why it is fading away, we need to step back for a moment. We need to ask, when did critical thinking first emerge in human history? What does it actually mean to think critically? After all, you might be thinking a lot, but are you truly thinking critically? So, let's get into it.
I feel like the biggest problem with today's generation and critical thinking is the emotional part, like he was saying, how people get taken over by their emotions. And a good example of this, and actually me and my buddy were just talking about this. We were talking about how people are so emotionally driven, especially in today's generation, to where people will come up with excuses to not do something because they don't want to do it. Like, and a perfect example for me and my channel and for me to talk about this is like the gym. You know, for me, it's such a habit now after so long, but I never understood people who choose not to work out because they don't like it or because it hurts. It's like, where is your actual, that's when the critical thinking steps in. And to me, that shouldn't even be something that you need to critically think about. That should just be literally common sense, but it's not. So when you're talking about getting in the gym and you're saying you don't want to because it hurts, you're literally letting your emotions get the best of you. And I'm not sexist or anything, but I do think that women are more emotionally driven than men. And I'm pretty sure it's a fact. Like psychologically, women are just more emotionally driven. But there's pros to that. But as a man, you can't let your emotions get the best of you, because if we just did things that we want to feel, we would all be making horrible and unrash decisions. I feel like that's how people die. That's how women get raped. I'm not saying people want to rape so they go rape people. I'm just saying your emotions and your things like are not getting, you're not allowing yourself to actually think about these circumstances and consequences of your actions.
Critical thinking is more than just thinking a lot. It is the disciplined habit of questioning assumptions, seeking evidence, and applying reason before accepting any belief.
Welcome to the live stream. Today we're going over how we ended up raising the stupidest generation, um, to the current viewer I have watching. But to go off of this is actually, I'm glad he brought this up, because I'm going to try not to pause this too much, but I do like to talk as much as I can to really put my opinion on these videos. But I do also understand that you guys would like to watch the video at somewhat of a frequent sense. But anyways, everybody in this world overthinks or thinks a lot. I don't care. Like, I mean, you have some people who might be a little clueless to things, and those people usually end up happier. People who think more are often less happy because they understand the reality and things of certain things, but that's not always the case. That's a fact too. But critical thinking is important because it limits you from taking a lot of other things into consideration, if that makes sense. When you're critically thinking, you fully understand that you only have certain amount of options. There's certain things that you can't even consider as an option because you're just too smart to understand that you can't do certain things.
In simple words, it is the art of not being fooled by others or by your own mind. Its roots stretch back over 2,500 years to ancient Greece. The philosopher Socrates pioneered a method of probing dialogue now known as the Socratic method. By asking sharp, uncomfortable questions, he exposed contradictions and weak foundations in what people thought they knew. He reminded us of a timeless truth. The only thing I know is that I know nothing. This humility, admitting ignorance before chasing clarity, is the very foundation of critical thought. But Socrates paid the ultimate.
That's actually really interesting. I never knew Socrates said that. And I do think the reason why I'm saying that, the only thing I know is that I know nothing. Is I was also talking to my friend about this, and I was talking about it, and I was like, the smarter you get and the more you learn, the more you literally intake information, is the first step to realizing how little all of us know. We know nothing as far as think about it. Like, I obviously know things, but I know what the majority of people know, and the majority of people know what the other majority of people know. You have the rare circumstance where you have someone who's really smart or studies something very niche specific, and they know obviously more about that thing. But when you're talking about a general aspect and just thinking about life and all the possibilities and just different ideas, politics, religions, you really, really start to understand that you don't know much at all. And the only way to kind of get an idea is to keep learning. But the more you learn is the more you'll come to the realization that the less we know. It's kind of ironic. You get smarter and you feel dumber.
This humility, admitting ignorance before chasing clarity, is the very foundation of critical thought. But Socrates paid the ultimate price for his relentless questioning. In 3999 BCE, he was accused of corrupting the youth and disrespecting the gods. His insistence on independent thinking threatened the comfort of society, and he was sentenced to death. From there, thinkers like Plato and Aristotle carried forward the torch of reason, building the framework of logic, inquiry, and
I have to look that up. Is that actually how Socrates died? They sentenced him to death because he opened up a new. Yeah, Socrates died in 399 BC by willingly drinking a cup of poisonous hemlock after being sentenced to death by the Athenian court for corrupting the youth. That is actually insane. That's something I did not know.
And skepticism. Centuries later, during the Enlightenment, philosophers such as Immanuel Kant called on humanity to rise from ignorance with the motto, sapere aude, dare to think for yourself. Voltaire and others championed the same spirit.
You know, it's kind of crazy, like, to think about, because, like, people nowadays are so caught up in the idea that the government is controlling us. And I'm not necessarily disregarding that. I do think that they do and that they are. But imagine in 399 BC if you fucking got sentenced to death for telling people to think for themselves. Nowadays, everywhere is promoted to have your own opinions, believe in your own beliefs, do what you want, believe what you want to believe. So it's crazy now, like how open and things are, and how many I'm not going to sit here and say the world's perfect and we have everything we want, but we have a lot of freedom considering that this guy died and got sentenced to death for literally telling people to think freely and for themselves.
Challenging.
But what I was going to say, it's kind of smart for the government or whoever was running the society at the time to do that. Because, I mean, think about it. If you're a person and you're trying to take over a country and gain as much power as possible, I would not want anybody having their own thought. I would want them all to think one way, and that's the way that they need to believe and truly understand that. Kind of like North Korea, the way he does it. He has everybody, and he literally just doesn't allow people to think for themselves in a way. It's a little different, but it's kind of the same idea.
Dogma and celebrating reason as the bedrock of progress. Critical thinking became the cornerstone of science, democracy, and innovation. It was long considered the mark of an educated mind, the ability to examine claims, weigh evidence, and cut through illusions. Of course, critics also emerged. Friedrich Nietzsche.
One thing I also should mention though is this is not the as good as it is for everyone to think freely and critically on their own, is also not the best option to let everybody do what they think. And I know you guys understand where I'm coming from with that.
Nietzsche once accused Socrates of overvaluing reason, warning that an obsession with questioning could drain life of its richness. Yet despite these critiques, the legacy of critical thinking has endured. It remains the freedom to ask why, to go beyond the surface of appearances, and to search for clarity in a world clouded with noise. But today, we are witnessing its decline more than ever. And why this is happening is what I am going to discuss now.
Information overload and no time to think. Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. But before he dives into this, I did want to say that. Let me see what he said last.
Its decline more than ever. Thinking has endured. It remains the freedom to ask why, to go beyond the surface of appearances, and to search for clarity in a world clouded with noise. But today, we are witnessing its decline more than ever. And why this is happening is what I am going to discuss now.
Yeah, I think it's funny. Back then, they killed him for telling people to think openly. But nowadays, we promote it and people choose not to do it. So we have more freedom to think openly, make our own decisions, and have our own opinions, yet it's going farther and farther away from people actually critically thinking. It's almost like the reverse effect. It's like you give them the opportunity and the possibility, and they just run away from it. In this generation, that's what I think has to also do with why it's not as beneficial as it would have been back in the day when people were actually finally doing the breakthrough to think for themselves.
We live in an age where every answer is just...
Sorry. Information
And why?
or reason one, information overload and no time to think.
We live in an age where every answer is just one click away. At first glance, this feels empowering. We have the wisdom of the world in our pockets. But the reality is far darker. We are drowning in information, and the human brain was never built to process this flood. Psychologists call it information overload, when data bombards us faster than we can reflect, forcing us to take mental shortcuts. Think about it.
This is actually very understandable, and I'm going to put it in a very quick way that I actually can understand this. Think about when you're raised by your family and they teach you a certain religion. And like based off of my perception, what I've seen, a lot of people are influenced to believing a religion because that's how they were raised. Which that's not a bad thing, but you didn't even take any time or chance to look into other religions or consider the possibilities of there being no religion and things like that. And some people should say you shouldn't question it and things like that, but that's again driving us away from the critical thinking. That was one of the first things I think I critically thought about was religion, because growing up, my life, my family, they didn't force it on me, but they showed me Hinduism, and I just barely dabbled into it and learned more. But as I got older, I wanted to be convinced that there was a God, because it's safer, it feels better knowing that there's a safe place. But I didn't fully believe it, all of it. So I took the time to actually think about it. I didn't just say, okay, I'm going to be a Hindu because my mom and my dad raised me to be a Hindu. And I feel like that's what a lot of people do. And I feel like that's the start to a lot of people not critically thinking, is they already start out believing a religion without even thinking about it. It's just been implemented in their life and they just do it. And that's the reason why I use that example, is because if I were to use the example as like putting on a seatbelt, like, well, why do you put on a seatbelt? Well, listen, it's safety reasons. There's reasoning that makes sense behind that. But for religion, there's reasoning that makes sense, but there's also reasoning that it doesn't make sense. There's plenty of reason that it doesn't make sense, and there's plenty of reason why it does. There's topics and debates all the time. It's not a finite answer. So, when you're talking like the seatbelt like example, there's facts and facts and facts about how it's safer. It'll take care of you. You won't get injured, blah, blah, blah. And you're kind of just influenced into doing it. And you never really take time to critically think because you don't really need to, because you understand that it's actually a benefit for you versus religion. And just that's like, those are two examples, but there's a lot more I feel like that I could just talk about. But that's a good example, I think, where all of this kind of starts at for the new generation.
If someone asks you to calculate 56 plus 87, do you pause and work it out, or do you instantly reach for your phone? Most of us choose the shortcut. Every detail of life has become Googleable, and while that makes life easier, it also trains us to offload our thinking onto machines. Over time, we forget how to reason deeply because we've stopped practicing it. The Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman once described two modes of thought: System 1, which is fast, automatic, and intuitive, and System 2, which is slow, effortful, and rational. Critical thinking lives in System 2. It is the part of us that questions, analyzes, and doubts. But here's the problem. When apps, calculators, and AI do the hard work for us, System 2 is left idle. Like a muscle that is never exercised, our deeper reasoning begins to atrophy. This is why many people today remember not the answer itself, but only where to find it. Studies even show that constant reliance on search engines makes us less likely to commit knowledge to memory. It's what researchers call the Google effect. We outsource.
I've actually fallen victim to this, but I don't think that means I'm stupid. And what I mean by that is, like, I don't know if you guys ever remember, like, in elementary school when we did those, like, times tables and things like that. And when you do the math in your head, like, I can go back and there's certain multiplication answers and just certain things that I can remember because I did the work to do it, and like 7 times 7. Like now that might be an easier one because it's two consistent numbers, but like even 7 times 6, 42. You know, like these are just answers I remember because I spent so much time thinking about it and doing it. Versus like if I were to add up 26 and 3/16, because I do fractions and stuff for work, plus 31 and 3/4, I could not just do that off the top of my head. But if I did it enough, or I just did it in my head, like he's saying, I would definitely remember it and be a lot more self-sufficient. But I think technology is a great tool to make things quicker. I don't think we should allow it to think for us. I think we should use it as a tool to execute our complex thoughts.
Our intelligence, skimming headlines, and trusting the first popular result. The result? Mental laziness. Our world moves so fast that we don't stop to reflect. We prefer instant headlines over complex reasoning, sound bites over analysis.
And that a good example is when you go online and you see something and it's not what it seems. Like he said, like, and I know this because I like a lot of gym science, and I'll see things and it's never exactly what it is, you know, especially when it comes into something that's just super unbelievable. I'm trying to think of one. Like their ashwagandha, if was one I saw a study on where like it literally will increase your muscle by X amount, and that's true. But there's so many other factors that play into that, like how you have to eat a certain amount of protein, carbs, and calories. You know, you have to maintain your resistance training. It's not as easy as just taking ashwagandha every day, 600 milligrams, and seeing muscle growth. You know, especially like that Jurassic. You have to do everything, and you have to make sure that you're consistently eating and bulking and just doing all these other things. But people go online and say, "Oh, take ashwagandha and you'll grow 50% more muscle in X amount of time." You know, that's true, but there's so many underlying factors behind that that you have to understand.
Intuition over scrutiny. The Socratic method of questioning, asking why and refusing to accept easy answers, has been replaced by a culture of Google it and forget it. Information overload has given us the illusion of knowledge but stripped away the discipline of thought. And in that silence, critical thinking quietly dies. Information overload may dull our minds, but something even more dangerous follows: the comfort of only hearing what we already believe. And this is what I am going to discuss now.
Echo
If
chambers and
information
confirmation
overload weakens
bias.
our ability to think, echo chambers destroy our willingness to think. In today's world, we live inside countless tribes, political, religious, cultural, or even based on hobbies and interests. Human beings naturally seek out people who agree with them, but technology has magnified this instinct to dangerous levels. Social media algorithms now track every click, like, and
Hold on, guys. I'm gonna try and pull up the chat. I don't. It says chat rate on OBS. I don't really know what that means. I'm still trying to figure out all this stuff out. Don't know if I know how to pull up the chat, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like I should get a notification, but it just says chat rate. Okay, and it went away. All right, back to the video.
comment, then feed us content that matches our past beliefs. The result? We end up surrounded by opinions that sound just like our own. This is the echo chamber, a place where we only hear our own voices echoed back at us. If you believe A, you will rarely encounter a strong case for not A. Over time, the mind gets lazy. It accepts whatever confirms its worldview and dismisses the rest as fake, biased, or stupid. This is confirmation bias, the mental shortcut that prefers comfort.
The most important thing I think is for people to learn or understand is that stupidity is not being dumb. Stupidity for me is one of these two things. It's having a closed perspective on things that are open to possibilities of different perceptions. Or it's also the act of consistently repeating the same mistake over and over again when you know that you shouldn't. So, what did he say exactly?
Or stupid. This is confirmation bias worldview. Over time, the mind gets lazy. It accepts whatever confirms its worldview and dismisses the rest as fake, biased, or stupid.
Yeah, if you ask me, the only way you can be stupid is, I mean, well, I guess that's kind of what he's saying, is the closed off perspective, only believing in one thing and thinking everything else is stupid. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I just said.
This is confirmation bias, the mental shortcut that prefers comfort over challenge. And in an age of endless digital tribes, almost everyone is trapped in one. What's worse, echo chambers are not just found in conspiracy groups or fanatical cults. Even skeptics, atheists, and self-proclaimed rationalists can form closed circles where their assumptions are never questioned. When the group's opinion feels safe, our deeper reasoning, our system too, goes.
That's another reason why everybody around you shouldn't always agree with everybody around you, and you shouldn't always be believing the same thing. And it's a quote that you can't have a team full of point guards. You need a center, you need a power forward, you need a point guard, you need all different positions. Because if you guys are all believing the same thing, you're literally just exactly doing what he's saying, just brainwashing each other into only believing one thing. And so your group creates this opinion, and since you have other people around you supporting it and relating to you and believing you, you guys are just together as a group stupid, because because those people agree with you. Like me and my friends, like me, especially me and my good friend, we question each other. Brody, he's on my channel. We've done a video together. When me and him talk, we talk about a lot of philosophical things, and we often question each other's beliefs, and we're actually don't believe a lot of the thing, like not a lot, but there's a lot of things that we disagree on, and that's fine. He believes the way that he believes, and I believe the way that I believe, but usually we're both open to each other's perspective, but not enough to believe it. So that's, if your friends and the people you're around are just constantly all like, it's like support is one thing, but just agreeing to everything that you are doing and saying, even if you like just everything, just if everything's just all good, then it's not good.
Silent. Instead of questioning, we conform. The effect is groupthink. Each tribe convinces itself that we alone have the truth, while outsiders are branded as blind, foolish, or even evil. Echo chambers breed blind spots. People stop asking, why do I believe this? And instead say, this is just what we believe. Honest questions start to feel like betrayal. The result.
I hate that, dude. I hate when people are like, well, it's just what I believe, or that's just what I think, or like, I just know. Like, with no actual, like, there's nothing in this world that probably makes me more upset when I have a actual debatable topic with somebody, and the only thing that they can come out of their mouth and that they can comprehend is that they just believe what they believe. Like, they're just like, well, I just believe what I believe, or it's just, I just know. That is like the dumbest thing you could say in a educational debate. I'm not going to say argument or anything, but when you're debating with somebody and it's literally like the dumbest thing. You have no reasoning, you have no evidence. You're literally just going based off of your thought, and I just don't understand how you're supposed to convince anybody to believe what you believe based off of that.
The result is a society where dogma replaces dialogue and loyalty to the tribe matters more than loyalty to truth. This is the exact opposite of the Socratic spirit, the courage to seek truth over comfort, even when it hurts. If information overload weakens the mind and echo chambers trap it, then sensationalism manipulates it. Modern media, whether it's news outlets, social feeds, or influencers, has mastered the art of drama. They know one thing very well: outrage sells. Attention is currency, and nothing grabs attention faster than exaggeration. Headlines are designed not to inform, but to provoke. Stories are often framed in the most shocking way possible. "You won't believe this," or "The world is ending if you don't act now." Even educators and honest creators feel pressured to exaggerate, because without drama, no one clicks. In fact, I admit that I sometimes use extreme titles like "The Only Way to Feel Peace" just to draw people in. It's an irony of our time. You must play the game of exaggeration or your message gets lost. But this is for a good cause to make you watch videos like
I feel like that's been around forever. I feel like as soon as the newspaper and just anything, any type of, literally any type of news that ever has been created, since the day it's been created, very, very soon after that, we kind of understood the concept of over exaggeration, because as long as you can say something and you're not lying, you're safe. You can exaggerate it and stretch the truth however you want, as long as it's not a full on false claim.
this. But in other cases,
I've seen plenty of power banks over my 15 years of reviewing tech, but this Ridge one quickly became a favorite. So this, a 10,000 milliamp hour battery that's already this.
the problem is this constant hype numbs us. When everything is advertised as a crisis, nothing feels trustworthy anymore. People lose patience for nuance, and their emotions take over where logic should be. Critical thinking struggles in an environment where every headline screams emergency, every post demands instant reaction, and every issue is dressed as a life or death battle. This is not new. Journalism has long followed the rule:
Yeah, that's what I just said. That's funny.
if it bleeds, it leads. But today's 24/7 news cycle, fueled by algorithms and profit-driven clicks, pushes sensationalism to an extreme. Breaking news banners, exaggerated statistics, and fear-loaded phrases like record lows or worst ever are used constantly, even when the situation requires calm analysis. The result? A population that is always anxious, always distracted, and rarely thoughtful. We click, we share, we panic, but we don't pause to think. In a world where everything is hyped to the third degree, rational discourse becomes almost impossible. Sensationalism creates a rumor mill of outrage where slow and careful thought feels out of place. Instead of Socratic questioning, we are left with knee-jerk reactions. And once again, collective stupidity grows stronger. But the real question is, how can we stop this? And this is what I am going to discuss now.
Before he gets into that, I want to say this. I think, and this is what I think this is opinion based, but everybody talks about how bad this generation is, how cooked we are, how stupid we are. And I understand that. I fully am aware of why someone would believe that. And I'm not even saying it's 100% false, but my argument here is that take a look at evolution and take a look at population. If you were to go back, the only reason, a huge reason why people aren't as smart now is one of the biggest reasons is the media. Back then, everybody was forced to think. We had to learn and things like that. We didn't have technology and things just constantly giving us information like the overload he's talking about. But I do think about all the crazy things that are happening right now. I mean, think about all the stuff that NASA's done. I mean, think about the people out there right now who are working to create something that is amazing and huge in the future. Like, you can't sit here and tell me that our generation isn't doing some of the most amazing stuff in the world ever. Now, I don't know if there'll ever be a comparison to the person who create or discovered like energy or electricity. Like, obviously those are such huge accomplishments, but we already accomplished that. Now look at what we're doing with all that stuff. Now, what I was trying to say though is that I think if you look back, the more general population was smarter. Nowadays, I don't think we have as many quantity-wise smart people, but I do think that the people who we have right now that are smart are very smart. And I do think that we have, due to the population increase, I think there's obviously more smart people now. And, but I think that there's also more dumb people and stupid people out there. So, I mean, pretty much, I guess I should say, what I'm trying to say is that history repeats itself. We are pretty much in the same boat that we were. I don't think we're getting any worse. I don't think we're getting much better. I think we're consistently creating things out of what we have that are huge accomplishments. But on that same hand, we have people who are just doing nothing, working very useless, pointless jobs, and just falling victim to just everything that they see. So I think it's the same, if you ask me. I think, honestly, we're doing cooler and crazier and smarter stuff now because, I mean, nowadays you can see literal kids getting rich and famous on TikTok and Twitch and doing all these things due to the opportunity that we have nowadays. And for a kid to use that knowledge that he knows that he has the opportunity to go big online and take advantage and full opportunity of that, like, what would even be the equivalent to a kid doing that like forever ago? Like, whenever this picture was drawn or taken, like in this time period, like what would even be the equivalent to a kid doing that? Like, because think about it, I mean, there's kids retiring their families, and that might not have to do much with smartness, but more just like the critical thinking part, where like he's using his tools and his opportunities that he has and seeing what he can do with it, or he or she can do with it, and doing it. Versus back in the day, it's like we didn't have these opportunities, So I don't know. I think it's pretty much. I think it's pretty similar. I don't think this generation is getting any stupider, but I do think we have more stupid people. But I also think we also have more smart people than we did from a long time ago.
Encourage curiosity. Curiosity is the antidote to mental laziness. Einstein once admitted, "I have no special talents. I am only passionately curious." Curious people don't stop at the first answer. They ask why again and again.
And this is why this is so important. And this is why smart people are smart, because they continuously ask why. And here's a perfect example of this too. And this is probably going to be some of the best advice I think I could ever give at my age right now. I'm not in a position to give advice, but this is one thing I know, is the more questions you ask and the more curious you are, the more you will learn and the smarter you will become. And a perfect example of this is I've always been the type to ask a ton of questions, especially when I started getting out of high school and into real world jobs. Because this is my thought process, is if I can figure out the answer to all my questions, then I can fully understand what I'm trying to do. So when I got out of high school, I was doing a trade job where I was doing glass shower doors. And when I first got in there, the guys, it was for a smaller company. And even if it's for a corporate company, it's the same kind of system. If you are not asking questions and you're looking at the manager, the person telling telling you what to do, and all you're doing is just retaining information, you're not understanding what you're doing. And I'm going to give you another example. And I learned most at my sales job, because this was a construction job, so it's a little easier to learn. You kind of just see and do. But sales is a lot more mental. So the reason why it's so important to ask these questions is because you can know the answer to something, but understanding the why will make you actually remember and actually learn it. Rather than just knowing, you actually have learned why you're thinking this way and why you're doing it for this reason. So like when I was in the sales position, my manager told me always follow up with your customers. And in my head, I'm just like, in an average person's head, or a person who's not critically thinking would say, okay. They would say, all right, let me follow up with my customers. me, and this didn't necessarily exactly happen because I already knew why, but this is like an example I can create and understand now and explain to you guys is I would ask them, well, why do you want me to follow up? Like, what's the point of that? Why is it so important? What can I get from it? You know, there's 3 or 4 questions right there that I asked based off of one piece of information. And if they say, well, you're consistently keeping yourself in this person's phone, you're making yourself easily accessible if they have questions, you're constantly reminding them that you're always there to help assist them, and all these things will help the customer come back in and choose you to work with. And then I understood the why of why I need to follow up. And these questions made me actually understand, you know, and the reason why it's also important to ask these questions is because if you can't get an actual answer, then you need to even spend more time critically thinking about what you're being told what to do or what you're being told as far as information goes. So if you're trying to learn something, always ask a ton of questions, because I have a guy who's under my belt right now, like training underneath of me, and he doesn't ask any questions. And for me, that's fine, because to I'm not here to teach him how to learn, or I can't teach him how to have that work ethic or that curiosity. You just have to have it, you know. And if I tell him, I'm like, I can't just tell him to ask me questions, because that's like a forcing him to think a certain way. I can tell him to ask me questions, but you know, is he really going to ask me them? Does he even know what questions to ask? And that's just that part of that critical thinking and that deep thinking that just, you know, if I tell him to do something, he's just going to do it without understanding the actual why. And when you understand the why of doing it, you can master what you're trying to learn so much quicker, efficiently, and better.
Before accepting any claim, pause and ask yourself, what is the evidence? How do I know this? What if the opposite were true?
That's literally what I
The
was just
quality
saying.
of our
I'm glad
thinking
you
is
brought that up.
revealed by the quality of our questions. Reading widely, journaling, or joining discussions and debates can help you revive that Socratic spirit of inquiry. Slow down and think. In a world that demands instant reactions, learn to resist. When you see a shocking headline, don't just skim. Read the full article, trace the source, and reflect. Avoid multitasking when dealing with complex ideas. Meditation and mindfulness can also train your focus. Remember, Daniel Kahneman's insight, our system 2 thinking, the slow, effortful kind, is where real analysis lives. Strengthen it by doing the math yourself, writing out arguments, or weighing pros and cons before making decisions. Diversify your sources.
Yeah, I mean, I accidentally muted it. Yeah, you want to slow down and think, for sure. I mean, that's it's like the number one most easiest thing to understand, if you ask me. When you move too quickly, you make irrational decisions, especially when you have no plan. You'll make bad decisions. So I'm going to make that one quick. That's all I'm going to say about that. You guys can, I feel like, understand what I'm saying.
Echo chamber. Deliberately seek out perspectives that challenge you. Read.
This is really important because you don't have to believe things because of what someone says, but you should believe things based off of the multiple sources you looked into and then taking it into your own consideration and possibilities in your own head. For example, why would I listen to someone who's jacked in the gym, a personal trainer, about financial advice as far as like accounting? Or like, I mean, not saying this person doesn't know anything. Let me say, like, I'm not going to ask an electrician about a plumbing problem, and I'm not going to ask a plumber about an electrician problem. You know, so you want to, but what I would do is I'd ask a plumber if I had a question about plumbing, but then I might also ask a general contractor, and then I might also Google it, and then I might also YouTube it, and then I might also look on Reddit. You know, I'm taking all these different sources because And this is mainly important when it's something important and when it's something that's questionable. When it's something that you understand that there could be risks to or problems with, you have to find multiple sources and understand the best possible option or answer that fits you and what makes sense to you, not just what someone said. And I just had something to follow up with that actually with. I forgot, it left my
Media
brain.
from different sides of the spectrum, follow thinkers you disagree with, and explore viewpoints from other cultures. When you encounter statistics or claims, trace them back to their original sources. Play devil's advocate with your own beliefs and invite others to question them. This is how you weaken confirmation bias and strengthen your ability to see clearly. Reform education and leadership. Critical thinking must also be cultivated at a societal level. Schools should emphasize reasoning, debate, and analysis over rote memorization. Philosophy, logic, and science projects that demand inquiry help.
I talked about this earlier, but yes, you need to have people in your group that will disagree with certain things that you believe in. You have to do that. You cannot be around a ton of people who are constantly telling you what you believe is correct. Everything we're doing is good. We're all perfect. You cannot have that because it takes away critical thinking, it takes away ambition. It makes you guys all feel like you're all bums and lazy and stupid together in the most straightforward and nicest way I can say that.
Train young minds to think. Adults can do the same by studying logic, skepticism, or works by great thinkers. Leaders, too, must model critical thought, showing not just conclusions, but the reasoning behind them. When public figures admit uncertainty and demonstrate honest inquiry, they set a cultural example that questioning is strength, not weakness. Every day, pick one assumption and flip it. Ask, what if this is wrong? What if the opposite were true? This simple exercise forces your mind into deeper reasoning. Another practice is teach back. Try to explain a complex idea to someone else. If you stumble, that reveals the gaps in your own understanding. Skepticism here is not cynicism. It's the courage to refine your knowledge by testing it. In the end, rekindling critical thinking means refusing to live on autopilot. It's choosing to question instead of blindly accepting, to reflect instead of react. As Socrates reminded us more than 2,000 years ago, the unexamined life is not worth living.
The unexamined life is not worth living. I like the way that we could end on that. And I agree. I don't think people
40-degree incline.
people just they go through life accepting everything that they see, hear, and believe. And I think we all could just use a little bit more. We could all just stop believing everything we see. But I will say I don't think we should waste our time trying to learn things that we already know the answer to at the same time. Because, I'm just a factual person. And there's certain things I'm not going to waste my time thinking about when I know the answer to, obviously. Like math, 1 + 1 is 2. I'm not going to sit here and question that. But on the rare occasion that I come across a deep, complex idea, I will question that. And I try to actually talk to you guys on my YouTube about that. So, yeah, thank you guys for watching on today's video. If we are the stupidest generation, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if you guys think that we are smarter, stupider, if you think that we're the same. I feel like all those possibilities could be potential. And, it's one of those questions we'll never actually know the answer to, but it's a great idea to think about, a lot of things to take into consideration. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. And thank you guys for watching for my live